So, then I would like to welcome Professor Håkan Jönsson from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and it will be very interesting to listen to your speech of the not about the water loop and cycle, but about the nutrients cycle. Very welcome, Håkan.
Thank you very much, Anders. Yes, I'm happy to see you and this many here. And I got the title Pharmaceuticals, a Risk for Circular Economy. And I didn't really know what to make out of it. And I think it demands or gives another question. Is source-separated black water an opportunity for the bioeconomy? And that is in line with what Anna talked about at the beginning of this day, the producer responsibility. Because the nutrients from the food end up in the toilet and we get them in the black water, just as we get most of the pharmaceuticals. And on this introductory slide, I have shown that nutrient loop. And I also give the answers so that you can dose for a while afterwards. For the first question, I think that the answer does not really seem like it's a risk. But source-separated black water is definitely an opportunity for Swedish agriculture to move towards the bioeconomy. If we look at the nutrients that are sort of handled on a household level, and these are numbers in grams per person and day. I see I forgot that. Then you can see that the black part of the bars here, that is the nutrients in the black water, they are really large. Most of the nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, all abiotic resources, they are in the black water. You have some in the food waste, shown in green, and you have some part also in the gray water. You can also see from the cadmium bar that actually the black water is more clean when it comes to cadmium than the nutrients that you have in the food waste. And yet, about 100 municipalities in Sweden, they have source separation of food waste to recycle that to agricultural land, while now no municipality has introduced in their piped areas and is source separation to try to get the nutrients of the black water back. And it can be a very good nutrient on agricultural land. In the green circle there, you can see the combination of nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium that is removed by major crops such as wheat, barley, oats, maize, rapeseed, beans, peas and rye. And inside of that circle also, marked as UE, is human urine, and TE, that is toilet waste. So what we excrete is almost exactly the nutrient combination that these crops remove from the field. And actually that combination of nutrients is far better or far closer to what is removed than, for example, compost, or you can see FS down here, which is farmyard manure. Here you have pig slurry, cattle slurry. And the reason that they don't fit what's removed from the field that well is that they actually pee on the floor, so you lose a lot of nitrogen in the barn. You also have sewage sludge over here. It contains all of the phosphorus, but very little of the nitrogen and potassium. And this could be a major, these nutrients, if they were source separated and recycled, could help to move Swedish agriculture towards a bioeconomy, because the mineral fertilizer that you see on top there, that is the second largest abiotic input that we have to Swedish agriculture. The largest one is diesel, and the mineral fertilizers are the second largest. And you can see that black water contains nutrients corresponding to approximately 40 to 50% of the phosphorus and the potassium, and some 24-25% of the nitrogen, or plant available nitrogen. Now, so that was the second question, my motivation for the answer of the second question. It could make a major change to moving Swedish agriculture towards a bioeconomy. Now to the risks. First, I think several of the speakers earlier today, they have talked about the estrogens and 17-alpha ethinyl estradiol and 17-beta estradiol, the hormones. Well, humans does not or do not excrete that much hormones. Actually, our farm animals excrete a lot more. One of the reasons is that humans excrete most of the normal hormone when they are pregnant. If a cow is not pregnant, it is slaughtered. So essentially all cows are pregnant all of the time. That is not the case in the human population. And you can see the change it does to the amount of estrogens that would be put on 1 hectare of fertilized crop. 5 grams if you fertilize with cattle manure, and 1 gram with human manure, or human urine. Sort of an indication that the hormones in the terrestrial environment are not that difficult is the fact that it has been calculated that the Danish agricultural sector produce approximately 1,200 kilograms of estrogens per year in cattle and pig manure. And I haven't heard that there are any difficulties with the hormone changes on the soil because of that. While those 50 to 60 kilograms that is emitted from the Danish wastewater treatment plants have been shown to give hormone changes in the fish. I mean, we have to remember that most mammals have, over the evolution, actually excreted in the terrestrial environment. And this is sort of a result of that. There are also studies on the degradation both of the 17-alpha ethinyl estradiol, the synthetic compound, and the natural one, 17-beta. The natural one degrades 2 to 7 times faster, but also the synthetic compound has disappeared after 44 days in the soil, even if it was added at 100 times higher concentration than what would be the case if you fertilized with human manure. In a study financed by HAV, and which Lotta Levin will present more of tomorrow, we also looked at the amount of the different pharmaceutical residues that we measured in black water or in liquid composted black water, and compared those substances with the amounts that has been sort of transported to Swedish farmland. I see that, down there, compared to sewage sludge, because we have used that for many years in Sweden. And you can see, if you look at the 1 year comparison, fertilizing 1 year with black water, then there's 3 substances that the black water, which has all of the pharmaceuticals from the toilet in it, will apply 3 substances in larger amounts, 5 substances in approximately the same amounts as the sewage sludge, and 9 substances in lower amounts. I think this comparison is the more relevant one, because most of the substances disappear in the soil after 1 year. But if you sum up what would be added after 5 years, then the 5 years application of black water would add 8 substances in larger amount than the sewage sludge, because you are only allowed to fertilize once with a 5-year dose of sewage sludge. And there's 6 substances that would still be in lower amounts per hectare. You can compare the amount of pharmaceuticals in black water also to some other things that is added to farm fields. Here I have compared it with the amount of antibiotics that is spread with German manure, because I found that on German manure. And I compared the amount of antibiotics that we measured in the composted black water, which would give an addition or a dose of 6 milligrams of one of the antibiotics and 30 milligrams of the second one, ciprofloxacin, as you see there. That can be compared with the manure from cattle in Germany, which would add 900 grams per hectare of tetracycline, and then of several other antibiotics in the amount of between 80 and 200 grams per hectare. There's approximately 5 powers of 10 in between them. And if you remember Joachim Larsson this morning saying that it's the concentration that is important, I would say for agricultural sustainability, it would not be antibiotics from black water that is the real risk. What you did right today is that you had lunch here with the ecologically produced chicken with essentially no antibiotic in its production chain instead of German meat. So eat Swedish or Norwegian meat and dairy, and then you decrease the flow of antibiotics to the environment. I should say also, I forgot to point that out, in Sweden we use only, well, in Germany they use approximately 15 times as much antibiotics as we do in Sweden per kilogram of meat. So that's why you should eat Swedish or Norwegian. Norway uses even less than we do. You can also compare pharmaceuticals, which is a biologically very active substances, with pesticides. They are also biologically very active, and they are actually designed to kill off certain organisms. And the two substances that we found would flow in the largest amount to the fields was one the diuretic and one antihypertensive medicine in the amounts of 2.5 and 1.1 gram per hectare. And you can compare that with the average application of herbicides and fungicides on potatoes in Skåne in the year 2009-2010, which was 3,870 grams per hectare, and most of that was sprayed during the cultivation period. That's about 1,550 and 630 times more than of the diuretic that we would add with the fertilizer. And the herbicides and fungicides, they are intended to kill organisms, not to change the amount of urine from them. We also did, but the financing was, or the budget was not that large, but we did a quick simulation of what would happen with the medical medicines or pharmaceuticals once it had been put onto the soil, how much of it would be taken up in the crops. And since we used a ready-made model, biosolid cemented soil level 4 model, we simulated the crops that were included in that model, which was carrots and grass. And these simulations was done by my colleague Sahar, who's a co-author of this presentation. And the model also simulates volatilization and the diffusion between 2 different soil layers, which we put to 0.2 and 0.5 meters, and the leaching between them and the degradation in the soil mass. So that's what we did, and here's the results, because we combined the uptake in wheat and in carrots with how much the average Swede consumes of wheat and of carrots. And you can see that it takes quite a number of years until an average Swede has consumed sufficiently much wheat or carrot to have even ingested sufficiently for one daily therapeutic dose. It takes between 20,000 and 100,000 years. You're talking about time spans that is close to the time we talk about storing nuclear waste. And it's far longer time spans than what you get if you do the calculation for one of the best waters in the world. So, my summary. I'd say that I can't say that pharmaceuticals is of no risk, but it's less risk than what is accepted in conventional farming. And there's probably negligible pharmaceuticals from the toilets to the surface water with the black water source separation system. But there more research is needed, because we got quite a lot of leaching in our simulations. But, negligible hormones from toilet to surface water, a big advantage. Negligible live pathogens from toilet to all environment, which should decrease the risk of antibiotic resistance development. And this type of system doesn't use more energy, as we heard in the previous presentation. Instead, all 6 different systems analysis all show that you save primary energy, you decrease the greenhouse gas emissions, you decrease the eutrophication, and it can work on small scale, also well below 20,000 PE. And much of the world needs this type of sewage systems. So I think that it has a great market potential in the world. And so I have answered the questions, I think, and I come up with a new question. Why isn't it implemented? So, pharmaceuticals does not seem a risk for circular economy. Source separation seems to instead to be a great opportunity, but why isn't it implemented? And with that, I thank, and with 0 minutes, I guess. And perhaps some questions.
Thank you very much. Extremely interesting input, and I think quite a new perspective, at least for me, and I think for many others here. Are there questions in the room? Yes. There's a microphone.
Very interesting, thank you. Would you like to specify what black water is for me? I'm not in the...
That is what is shown here. Black water comes from the toilet. So it's only toilet water. It consists of it should consist of urine, feces, possible cleansing material like toilet paper, and possible flush water.
Okay. Any further questions in the room? I came up with, I'm just curious, and maybe I missed it in your explanation, but is there a difference in how the substances degrade if you compare water and soil? Is that an absorption in the soil that the decrease in available substances or diluted substances is so high in the soil?
There's certainly a difference, and some substances they can absorb very well to some particles, which can actually lower the degradation or delay the degradation. On the other hand, we have then also a lower risk for them spreading. But it's very complicated, and that's not my field of research. That's just what I've heard. I work more on the systems analysis side, so I gather information.
Okay, great. Thanks, because I think most of the people here are coming from the water perspective, and I think of waterborne spreading, so the soil is an interesting aspect here.
It's sort of interesting because up until late 1800s. I mean, human excreta had not been spread to water environment, and many of the problems we've seen through the 1900s is because we tried to change this system that we had for thousands of years.
Great. Yes. There's the microphone.
So, oh shit. Although a lot of those pharmaceuticals are present in very low concentrations in black water, a lot of them also extremely potent. So I was wondering, like, how sure are you that the concentrations in, for example, runoff to nearby waterways will not be high enough to cause negative effects?
Well, I said on that point that more research was needed, so I'm not 100% sure. But if you look at when it is applied and when you have precipitation in Sweden, for example, then normally, if you look at Sweden here, we don't have much runoff during the vegetation period. I mean, during the vegetation, you don't really have any leaching to groundwater either, because most of the precipitation is evaporated. So I can't be 100% sure, but the farmers, they try to handle this because they have been taught not to apply nitrogen nor pesticides in such a way that they are runoff to the surrounding water. I mean, some farmers, they even have fields close to drinking water sources. So that is something they have been trained in for a long time. I think actually that these risks are far lower than with the pesticides.
Okay, thank you. And we have one last question over there.
Yeah, hi. Very interesting talk. Have you done any effect studies on biota or microbiota in soil?
As I said, I work more with systems analysis, so I have not done it. I know that some veterinary medicines, they have effects in the soil. That's especially parasitic medicines that is given, for example, to racing horses, because they have to be given that very frequently, not to spread the disease, and that has affected worms, for example. Those examples I know of. I don't know of other studies, no.
So that might be the question, or the answer to your question in red.
That was a veterinary thing. We don't use parasitic medicines at all in that amount, the humans.
Yeah, I just mean that the lack of studies might be enough for not implementing the...
Yeah, so, but on the other hand, I would say, why don't you have studies? Because there's no research money, because it's not implemented. So you are in a catch-22.
Great. Thank you very much, Håkan Jönsson.
Thank you.